Hello, we are back. We do not have any members of the Lavaridge Raiders with us, but we're going to go over their draft analysis, we're going to analyze their draft anyway. So they started off with their first pick with the G-Max Venusaur, followed it up with the Torkoal, the Dragalge, the Kanto Slowbro, the Amoonguss, Mudsdale, Onyx, Orbeetle, Impidimp, and then Shellos. So for synergy, we gave them a B. We really like the first four picks of this draft. The Gmax Venusaur with the Torkoal, a powerful combination, something that absolutely needs to be respected. The ability to have chlorophyll and sun with the Sunsetter, and then also being able to have access to like sleep powder, and then the Gmax Vine Lash, powerful moves. So I think those that combination was a great combination to go for at the top of the draft. And then to wrap it up with Dragalge, which is a powerful Trick Room Sweeper, and the Kanto Slowbro, so that way they can get some speed control to be able to get that Torkoal and the Dragalge in optimal position in order to succeed in games. So we really like those first four picks. Now I think after that it tends to fall apart. Now you can obviously argue that Amoonguss is a very good Pokemon. It's one of the best Trick Room mons in the game. It can control the flow of games. It's 30 base speed. It can redirect things. It can put stuff to sleep. It's really oppressive in Trick Room. It can force you to play around things a lot. But I think that at 90 points, it's a little high. And while you may have been able to fill out like a good grass type to go along with the Torkoal, well, that you already have the Venusaur there. It more or less does the same thing. Kind of kind of is obviously at opposite ends of the spectrum. But as far as putting stuff to sleep go, I mean, I felt that the pick was kind of redundant, and you could have gone for something like maybe a Klefki that was a lot a lot cheaper, that can set sun, that can also synergize better with the rest of the team, put up screens, and kind of help the Torkoal and the Dragalge and the Venusaur kind of stay around more. So while we liked the first few picks, we just felt that after round four, even with the Amoonguss pick as powerful as it is, it just doesn't seem to hold up to what you would normally want. Like the Mudseal is okay, but that's a lot of points to spend for something that is kind of doing it does okay in Trick Room. It's kind of in the middle. You're not really supporting it that well, in my opinion. I mean, you have the Impidimp next to it, but it seemed very weird. It went from having like a clear path in the first four picks where you're like, oh, I really like where they're going here, and then almost just stumbling out of the gate, picking the Moongus really high, going for Mudsteel and really high, and then the ninth, 10th picks, because I think they ended up picking a Gardevoir that was exceeded their budget, so they ended up having to get a penalty where they picked last. It I wish they would have tried more to dig themselves out of the hole. I understand that obviously people are going to make mistakes, but it really felt like once they made that mistake, they just kind of threw their hands up in the air and they just started picking stuff so that way they can fill out the rest of their draft. And it's disappointing because I feel that the first four picks were so good together that they couldn't even put something on there that might have helped in any like little way. Um, so, at the same time, a lot of the mons still work together. So we end up giving them a B overall for synergy.
Threat level, we actually bumped them up a little bit to a B plus. There's a lot of things on here that can be very threatening. Um, the Venusaur, obviously in Sun, is an absolute monster. It's got a great secondary effect on that Gmax attack. Torkoal, great Trick Room Sweeper. It's one of the slowest Pokemon in the format. Um, even Dragalge. Dragalge is not as slow as you might like, but it's still decent enough to function inside of Trick Room. It has adaptability for some extra big damage. Um, I could even see them going for if they have this might be a little bit difficult to position, but if they have Trick Room up, they might be able to go for something like a bulldoze on Mudsdale, and to activate the weakness policy on Dragalge, and then Dynamax the Dragalge and start going for +2 adaptability max ooze. I can see that actually sweeping pretty well if a team's not prepared for it, or if they don't have Pokemon that are slow enough to counter the Dragalge, which a decent amount of Pokemon are. It's base 44, I believe. So there's a decent amount of Pokemon that are gonna beat it speed wise inside of Trick Room. Um, the the Amoonguss obviously is a huge threat. Nobody likes playing against Amoonguss. It's been an absolute staple in every VGC format that it has appeared in. A bulky Pokemon with a great defensive typing, Grass and Poison, with Rage Powder and a 100% accurate Sleep move. That's going to be deadly on virtually any team. It's going to provide great support. Putting things to sleep inside of Trick Room while you have some kind of an effective sweeper like Torkoal can be very dangerous. Even Mudsdale can be a really dangerous Pokemon in its own right if you just slap an Assault Vest on it, start getting some stamina boosts, and you. And if you Dynamax something like that, it's going to be just unkillable. And if you get enough stamina boosts, you come back down after maybe getting 1 or 2 stamina boosts. Maybe you went for a Max Steel Spike or something. That the Mudsdale's Body Press is going to be especially powerful. So there are a lot of good threats. That's why we rated them decently high on threat level. The problems there are 2 main problems with their threat level. One being that so much of this stuff requires some kind of field setup to really be effective. The Venusaur needs Sun to be on the field, and pretty much everything else from the Torkoal to the Mudsdale really needs Trick Room to be up to be the most effective that it can be, with the exception of Amoonguss, because it is so bulky. It provides redirection support even outside of Trick Room. Slow Spore is really great because then you have a chance to do whatever you want the next turn, because that Pokemon you just spored either has to sit on the field, take a guaranteed sleep turn, or switch out. So Amoonguss can still kind of function outside of Trick Room, but it just like most of the threats on this draft, it really does want Trick Room. So there's not a lot that can just hit the field and be immediately threatening. They all need some kind of setup, whether it's Trick Room or Sun. And granted, if these guys lead Venusaur and Torkoal, that is definitely a combination that can just hit the field and be threatening immediately. But it is also very predictable. And then, of course, because their draft is so top heavy, a lot of the four Pokemon that they drafted after Mudsdale, all of their lower tier Pokemon, definitely not as threatening. Onix is really not a threat at all. I can't see them bringing it ever. It has a terrible HP and special defense stat. It has a high defense stat, but what's it really going to do while it's sit there tanking physical hits? Its base attack is at 45, I believe. I can't see the Onix doing much of anything. At least the Shellos has Storm Drain. At least the Impidimp has Fake Out and Prankster Screens. Orbeetle can set up Trick Room, I suppose, but none of those Pokemon are going to be particularly valuable on this draft, I don't think. Their draft grade is really what hurts them the most. Like Anthony said, we liked their first 4 picks. The Sun mode with an effective Trick Room mode is a great idea. The problem is that after those 4 picks, we really felt that their draft fell apart. They spent far too many points on Amoonguss. It's a little bit troubling that we see Amoonguss and Venusaur on the same draft, considering that they're both S tier picks. They both cost a lot, and essentially putting safety goggles on a fire type if you're going up against this team is a really effective way to deal with both of these big S tiers. And then suddenly you have one Pokemon on your opponent's team that shuts down 180 points worth of your Pokemon. Um, so we felt that while getting 2 S tiers for this team may not have been a terrible idea, we really think that the Amoonguss pick was a big mistake. It sucked up so many points, and um, it was another Pokemon that's not completely reliant on Trick Room, but really wants to be in Trick Room to be the most effective it can be. Uh, and it's the same type as its other S tier. Really relies on powder moves to be effective. If there's something that it can't hit super effectively that's holding the safety goggles, it's pretty much just shut down by that one Pokemon. So uh, we felt that the round 5 pick was a serious mistake. Mudsdale is not necessarily bad again. After they've spent so many points already, to get another A tier is probably not the best idea. Even though Mudsdale does kind of fit with this hard Trick Room draft that they were going for. Um, and then, of course, going into round 7, this is where they made their crucial budgeting mistake, and we do have to knock them down for that. This is the draft order metric is based on how effective you are at drafting, and to make such a crucial mistake to draft something that you can't afford, and then to suffer a penalty to have your 7th pick forced to the end of the draft. It's a really crucial mistake that they made, and we have to knock them for that on the draft grade. Um, and then especially considering that their draft is so top heavy, with that Venusaur and Amoonguss, with those Venusaur and Amoonguss picks, they were forced to, and then of course they got 2 A tiers and 2 B tiers with those. So it really felt a lot like, especially with the mistake in round 7 when they attempted to draft Gardevoir, it really felt like they weren't paying attention to how many points they were spending. It really felt like they weren't. They were a little bit careless in how and kind of frivolous in how much they were throwing these points around. It's possible they intended to have a top heavy draft in the first place, but especially given that they made that mistake in round 7, it really felt like they were just kind of throwing points all over the place because they wanted good Pokemon and really were not thinking about how the overall draft was going to come out in the end. It seemed very short-sighted. Um, and then, of course, having to pick a C tier, a D tier, and 2 E tiers at the end, it really does hurt. The Orbeetle, I suppose I can see being kind of useful. At least they did get another Trick Room setter, but the lack of diversity in their Trick Room setters is another thing that hurts them. They really should have taken some of those points, especially the ones that they perhaps wasted on Amoonguss, and picked something better, something that could help them set up Trick Room more consistently. Because of course, the 2 Trick Room setters we see here, they're both Psychic type, and they don't have secondary types that hold up, that help them patch up those weaknesses of the Psychic type. They're both weak to Bug. They're both weak to Ghost. They're both weak to Dark. So sharing all of those weaknesses is really not great. And to top it all off, the Orbeetle, it has a 90 base speed stat. It's bulky, so it could set up Trick Room, and it can take a hit before it does so. But its other stats are really not great. It's not very offensive. It's like I said, 90 base speed. So once it gets into Trick Room, we really don't feel like it's going to be able to do anything. So you're kind of relying on that Slowbro more than anything to really set up Trick Room, because it's actually going to be able to function inside Trick Room. Its a special attack stat is much better than the Orbeetle's offenses. It's going to be a much better Pokemon to have inside Trick Room than the Orbeetle. So you're kind of relying on one Trick Room setter to do that work. It is a good one to have. It has Oblivious. It's basically a built-in mental herb. Can't be taunted. but at the same time, you're relying on that one Pokemon to set up Trick Room, and the other Pokemon that you have as kind of your backup Trick Room setter shares all those Psychic type weaknesses. Um, so because the draft is so top heavy, we think that they allocated their points pretty poorly. We had to give them a C minus on their draft order grade.
So with the C minus, obviously hurting them, that brought their overall team grade down to a C plus. I think it really showed what happens if you're careless in this draft and you kind of just spend points without really thinking about how you're going to be proceeding in the next few rounds. I think what you kind of mentioned too is they could have been going for a top heavy draft, but they were 5 points off. So when they took Gardevoir, they only had 10 points left with with three more Pokemon to go. Um, had they had 5 points left, they could have taken three E tiers and just filled out their draft. So they were real close to. Had they made a couple of changes to be able to fit that really top heavy draft together, but they just didn't allocate their points correctly. I think the Amoonguss really hurt them. It does a lot of the same things that the Venusaur does. It puts down a little bit more it makes their Trick Room mode a little bit better. In my opinion, it kind of makes the team too reliant on Trick Room now that the Amoonguss is there. And I think another thing that we really have to hit them on is the fact that Amoonguss is really their only form of redirection. With a team that wants to set up Trick Room, you want to have multiple ways to be able to, redirect threats by either faking them out, by setting up some type of screen so that way they could be bulky enough to set it up again, or you can do a lot of things, and Follow Me is one of the more consistent ways of getting Trick Room up. Rage Powder, not so much, especially in Draft League when, like Matt kind of alluded to, all it takes is for, you to throw safety goggles on your ghost type, your powerful bug hit, bug move or an electric type attack or, any of those, a dark type, any of those things that are going to hit both Orbeetle and Slowbro. Obviously, the electric type isn't going to hit the Orbeetle hard, but the other three, they share those weaknesses. You throw safety goggles on them, there's really nothing that you can do to stop the big attack from going in there. I think that's really something that was overlooked. I really would have liked to see something else in that Amoonguss slot. It just seemed like such like redundancy, and I felt that combined with the mismanagement of the draft just really put him in a tough spot. So C plus, while it sucks when you see the first four picks and how powerful they are, it sucks to give a team like that with those first four a C plus overall. But ultimately, the bottom half of the roster, it balances it out. Unfortunately, it balances it out in the way of it's so bad that it drags the other really really good four that you drafted down to that C plus area. So unfortunate, but that's the way draft leagues work sometimes. So going into the pros, we're going to really hit this real quick. The first four picks, we loved them. We really thought that they were good, versatile picks. And honestly, at watching this draft unfold, we were really, really liking the Lavaridge Raiders going into around the fifth round, where we believe that once they picked the Amoonguss, it put them so much behind the eight ball with their budget that I believe that's really the catalyst of where it all fell apart. Obviously, the straw that broke the camel's back was the Gardevoir, but I really believe that it all started from that Amoonguss pick in the fifth round. So, as much as we like those first four picks, after that it started to fall off, which sounds so weird, right? Such a solid mon like Amoonguss. When I drafted when I ranked the top 10 Pokemon in S tier, I honestly did have Amoonguss as one of those top 10 Pokemon. I think it's really good. I think it's very versatile. I think it goes onto a lot of teams, but not on this one. It just almost seems so redundant just with the first four picks already there, and it seems so weird to say like to be grabbing Amoonguss, especially in the fourth round where it's a great value, but it just doesn't synergize well here. So another thing too is obviously they have a very powerful trick room mode. So teams that have trick room options are going to be more dissuaded to use them. They're not going to want to bring them as much. If anything, they're going to try and go hard to stop the trick room. Which obviously knowing that they really don't have any ways to stop you from stopping the trick room because they only have redirection and I guess impy dimp with fake out and with screens. It's tough. It just overall looks tough. If you're going to bring Trick Room against this team. But if you can outlast them and if you can deny it, it will. You can put yourself in a decent spot because really the only thing that's fast is that Gmax Venusaur. And then one of the other pros is obviously we really like their Firewater Grass core, but that kind of goes with their first four picks again. You have the Venusaur, you have the Torkoal, you have the Slowbro. Great core. I mean, just even with the Slowbro having the added ability to set up Trick Room. It has good bulk. It has the built-in mental herb, like Matt alluded to. I really think that it fits so well in this core because it not only supports the Torkoal really well by being able to set Trick Room up, but I kind of also think that it supports the Venusaur well too because when Sun does end and maybe there's another fast mon on the field, you're able to take stuff down that might be able to set Trick Room up and take stuff down that might be able to threaten the Venusaur because Scald's obviously a good option. You get that chance to burn. So I think I really like the Firewater Grass core on this team. I think it was one of the better ones. So if anything is going to save this team, that's really the backbone on it. A few transactions and a few changes here or there, and I really think that they could put this team into like a solid B plus range. But man, that lower half of the roster it's really tough to look at, and then the Amoonguss and Mudsdale almost feel like they're too Trick Room heavy. It makes it really Trick Room heavy. Good Pokemon, but we question on if they belong on this roster.
Just to follow that up with the cons, one of the most glaring weaknesses of this draft is that it is so top heavy. You can almost guarantee that they're going to bring slots 1 through 6 to every match. They're probably going to slap the Orbeetle and Impidimp into team preview as bluffs. But it's very rare that they're actually going to bring them out, I think. And even if they do, at that point they have an Impidimp or an Orbeetle on the field, which are Impidimp at least it's got fake out, can do a little bit of prankster stuff, but it's not lasting as long as Grimmsnarl or Morgrim is. It's going down real quick, even if the damage is being mitigated by screens. And like we mentioned with Orbeetle, there's not a whole lot it can do, especially after it sets up Trick Room, which in this team it clearly wants to do. So because it's so top heavy, it's easier to prepare for. It's not. I can't see it being as effective as other top heavy drafts, such as the Sadistic Seniors. Their draft is clearly top heavy. But they have a few different modes. They're not quite as predictable. It's
design.
Right. It's not just Trick Room with one small sun mode. So it's really not going to be too tough to know what they're going to be trying to do, which is kind of relevant to the second point. It's there's a real over reliance on Trick Room here. If a team works really hard to deny the Trick Room setup, this team is going to really struggle. Especially if they also have an answer to the Sun. If the Raiders run into a team that has like a Ghost type with Imprisoned Trick Room, and then they have a Prankster Pokemon with Rain Dance, and they just have 4 other solid Mons that synergize well and can take care of the rest of the Raiders team with some decent play. That's going to be really, really hard for the Raiders to go up against. Um, and that doesn't even take a whole lot of creativity or crazy prep, or you know exactly what you're getting when you go up against the Raiders. I'd be interested to see them come out with some unique strategies, something that maybe we're not really expecting, something that's not too over reliant on Sun and or Trick Room. Um, but with the way that this draft looks, I think for most teams playing against the Raiders, what you see here is what you get. There's not a whole lot of hidden techs. Um, it's you're going into it playing against a hard Trick Room mode with a Sun option. Um, and again, the there's not a great diversity in Trick Room setters here. There's two of them, both psychic type. They both have all of the psychic type weaknesses. Slowbro is definitely a little bit better at setting up Trick Room, but then if you have a really powerful grass type, uh, you can kind of just blow up that Slowbro. You're gonna ignore the Rage Powder from Amoonguss. You're gonna ignore the Sleep Powder and Spore from Amoonguss and Venusaur. Um, and if you have something next to that grass type that can effectively deal with that Torkoal without being too weak to the Venusaur, you're going to have a great lead against this team that's going to be really hard to take care of. You're gonna be able to prevent the Slowbro from setting up Trick Room pretty easily unless it decides to run a Rindo Berry or something like that. Um, and there's not a whole lot of other ways that this team really wants to get Trick Room up. You can try the Orbeetle, but again, it's not going to be as effective inside of Trick Room as that Slowbro. Uh, it's it's too fast. It's not offensive enough. There's not really much it wants to do once it gets inside of Trick Room. So with a hard Trick Room team, you want several different ways to be able to get Trick Room up, and you want your Trick Room setters uh, to want to function inside of Trick Room. And last, of course, as we've hammered on this point a couple of times already, we really feel the points were poorly allocated here. Um, it's not just that the draft is top heavy, but it feels like the second S tier pick in Amoonguss just doesn't provide enough diversity in this draft. Kind of, it's doing some of this. It's the same type as Venusaur, likes to put things to sleep. If you have a hard stop to sleep or a hard stop to powder moves, you're shutting down both S tiers at the same time, and that's really really terrible. When both of the Pokemon that you picked in the highest tier are effectively useless against something on the other side of the field, then your lower tier Pokemon really have to pick up the slack, and it's going to be harder for them to do that than it is for S tiers to do that. So. And then, of course, that eventually led to the devastating mistake that they made in round 7, attempting to draft Gardevoir when they didn't have enough points, and then that led them to it sort of looked like they scrambled for a few more options that could hopefully cover for the weaknesses of the rest of their draft, but they just weren't. There's no way they were able to do that with the amount of points that they had left. So seems like kind of a short-sighted draft strategy.
Yeah, I think that covers a lot of it. One other thing that I kind of wanted to get off was that I feel that them going straight Trick Room is probably their weakest mode too. That's another problem is their Trick Room lead isn't that strong. And I actually feel that a lot of their success is going to come from teams over preparing for that Trick Room lead and them just leading Torkoal Venusaur and just blowing through stuff. I think that that's actually going to be their most effective way of getting wins. But at the same time, that's so straightforward and so easy to prep for that I can't help but be a little bit worried on how the execution of some of these strategies are going to take place throughout the year. Definitely a team that can benefit from transaction periods if they can hammer out exactly what they want. Um, but I think that there are definitely a few picks, particularly high picks like the Amoonguss and the Mudseal, that could really clear up their budget a little bit and, maybe save them. Even if you go from an S tier pick and an A tier pick and then move that down to maybe grabbing an A and a B and setting yourself up for the next transaction period to where maybe you can get a couple of those E tiers out and maybe get some a C tier in or something like that. It's going to take some shuffling. It's going to take some shuffling, but that's
Yeah.
what happens when you get hit in the draft in round 7. A bad round to get hit into, because that's where really you want to start picking up those D tier mons that are going to reinforce the backbone of your team already, and to get pushed back down into the bottom of the draft and be forced to pick up some less than ideal mods, it just really hurt them.
Not to mention, it was just harder for them to do that anyway with
Yeah.
the amount of points that they spent up top.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think that pretty much covers the Lavaridge Raiders, right? That concludes all of our draft analysis for all of the teams. In the next video, we're going to be breaking down exactly the general parts of all the report cards, and we're going to put the week 0 power rankings in.
Our
So,
draft first. Before that.
oh yeah, actually, you're right. Our draft is going to be up first. So we pushed ours all the way to the end because we didn't want to have any weirdness with having Hector and Alan just coming in the middle and doing it for us. It wasn't us that did our own draft. We had Hector and Alan from LA New Wave go ahead and do it for us. So that's actually going to be a pretty fun interview to do. Can't wait to actually be on the other side of that. So we'll see you guys then.